The email arrived at exactly 2:03 a.m., the kind of hour when even small sounds feel louder and the mind is less prepared to question strange things. Ethan Malik noticed it only because he was still awake, half focused on finishing a report for work while the rest of the apartment building slept. The subject line was simple: "Your appointment is confirmed." At first, he assumed it was spam. But when he opened the message, the details made his fingers pause over the keyboard. The appointment was scheduled for the following Thursday at 3:30 p.m. at a clinic he had never visited. Attached was a medical file under his full legal name, including his birth date, phone number, and home address. Ethan frowned and leaned closer to the screen. The file listed a consultation with a neurologist regarding progression monitoring. That phrase alone felt wrong. Ethan had no neurological condition. He hadn't even seen a doctor in over a year. Thinking it was a clerical mistake, he scanned the rest of the document until a line near the bottom made his stomach tighten. Patient history, early stage cognitive decline, diagnosed 18 months ago. Ethan read the sentence again slowly, feeling a strange pressure build behind his eyes. 18 months ago, he had been perfectly healthy. He would remember something like that. There would have been tests, hospital visits, prescriptions. But there were none. The file looked official, though, formatted with medical codes, doctor signatures, and timestamps. At the bottom of the email was a note that said simply, "Please do not miss this appointment again. Ethan sat back in his chair, confused. The message implied he had already missed previous appointments. His first instinct was to delete the email and move on, but curiosity mixed with unease kept him staring at the screen. He checked the sender address. It belonged to a private neurological center across the city. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but he could not place why. After a moment, he picked up his phone and searched the clinic online. The building existed. The doctors were real. Their website listed advanced treatments for memory disorders and degenerative brain conditions. Ethan felt a chill run through him. The file attached to the email contained detailed notes, including references to cognitive tests and MRI scans. None of it made sense. He closed the laptop, telling himself it had to be some kind of identity mix-up. Yet as he stood up from his desk, a faint feeling of unease followed him into the kitchen. While filling a glass of water, he noticed something small taped to the inside of the cabinet door. A yellow sticky note written in his own handwriting. It said, "If they email again, go to the appointment. Don't ignore it like last time." Ethan stared at the note for a long moment, trying to remember when he wrote it. Nothing came to mind. He peeled it off slowly, turning it over in his fingers as if the paper itself might explain the gap in his memory. He had lived alone in this apartment for 2 years. No one else could have written it. Which meant he did. But the message sounded like a warning left by someone who expected to forget something important. The thought settled heavily in his chest. If the medical file was fake, why would he leave himself a reminder about it? Ethan returned to his desk and reopened the laptop. The email was still there, the appointment time unchanged. Thursday, 3:30. For several minutes, he debated whether to contact the clinic and demand an explanation. But another possibility began to form quietly in his mind, one that made his pulse slow in an uncomfortable way. What if the email wasn't a mistake? What if he had actually been to that clinic before and simply couldn't remember it? He glanced back toward the kitchen cabinet where the sticky note had been. The handwriting was unmistakably his. That meant somewhere in the past he believed this appointment mattered enough to warn his future self. Ethan looked again at the line in the file that mentioned cognitive decline diagnosed 18 months ago. If that diagnosis was real, it would explain the missing memories. But it would also mean that the person who wrote the sticky note might have been trying to hold on to something important before his memory started slipping away. The idea left a quiet dread settling in his thoughts. He checked the calendar on his phone. Thursday was only 2 days away. For a moment, he considered ignoring the whole thing. Then he imagined waking up months later with even larger gaps in his memory, wondering what he might have missed. Slowly, reluctantly, Ethan clicked the option to confirm the appointment. The reply message appeared instantly on the screen as if someone had been waiting for it. Thank you for confirming. The doctor has been informed you finally remembered. Ethan stared at the final line of the confirmation email, his hand resting motionless on the laptop trackpad. The doctor has been informed you finally remembered. The wording unsettled him more than the diagnosis itself. It suggested that forgetting this appointment was expected, maybe even routine. He reread the message several times, hoping it would feel less strange with repetition, but the opposite happened. It began to sound deliberate, as if someone knew exactly how his memory behaved. He closed the laptop slowly and sat in silence for a moment, trying to replay the last 2 years of his life in his head. Nothing felt obviously broken. He held a steady job as a data analyst, paid his rent on time, met friends occasionally. His life wasn't chaotic or confused. Yet small details suddenly started to bother him. There were times he found grocery items in his refrigerator that he didn't remember buying. Once he discovered an unopened package on his desk with his name on it, but no memory of ordering it. At the time, he blamed stress or distraction. Now those moments felt different, like missing pieces of a puzzle he never realized existed. The next morning, Ethan woke up earlier than usual with a lingering sense of unease. While making coffee, his eyes drifted across the kitchen and settled on something he had never paid attention to before. The wall beside the refrigerator held a small corkboard. It wasn't unusual. Many people pinned bills or reminders there, but when Ethan stepped closer, he noticed that most of the notes were dated. Some from last week, some from months ago. Every single one was written in his handwriting. The messages were short and practical. Buy milk, pay electricity bill, send report to Martin. But a few stood out because they felt oddly specific. One read, check wallet before leaving the house. Another said, if you feel confused, read the notebook. Ethan frowned. Notebook? He scanned the corkboard again and spotted a smaller note partly hidden behind a grocery receipt. Blue notebook is in the bedroom drawer. It's important. Ethan's chest tightened slightly as he walked into his bedroom. The apartment felt different now, as if it had quietly contained clues he never bothered to notice. He opened the bedside drawer and found the notebook immediately. It was small, with a worn blue cover and a pen clipped to the side. For a moment he hesitated before opening it. Something about the situation felt like stepping into a conversation with a version of himself he didn't remember being. When he finally flipped to the first page, he saw a message written clearly across the top. If you are reading this and you don't remember writing it, that means the memory resets are happening again. Ethan felt a cold wave run through him. He continued reading. The notebook explained that about 18 months ago, he began experiencing unusual memory gaps. Entire conversations vanished from his recollection within days, sometimes hours. Doctors initially thought it was stress or sleep deprivation, but after multiple scans and tests, they diagnosed a rare neurological condition affecting memory consolidation. The words blurred slightly as Ethan read them. According to the notes, his brain could still form memories temporarily, but many of them faded before becoming permanent. To cope with the problem, he had started leaving reminders for himself. Notes, lists, instructions. The notebook was meant to be a guide written by the version of him that still remembered things. Ethan turned the page slowly, his heart beating faster with each sentence. Several entries described visits to the neurological clinic mentioned in the email. The doctor's name matched the one on the appointment confirmation. Apparently, the appointments were meant to track how quickly his memory deteriorated. But the last few entries in the notebook shifted in tone. The handwriting looked slightly rushed, less controlled. One page read, "Something doesn't feel right about the tests." Another entry said, "The doctor asked questions about things I never told anyone." The final written page was dated 3 weeks ago. The message was only one sentence long. Don't trust the clinic until you know what they're really studying. Ethan closed the notebook slowly, his thoughts racing. If his memory condition was real, then the notes made sense. But the warning about the clinic introduced a new layer of uncertainty. Was the doctor hiding something from him, or was the message simply the paranoia of someone losing control of his memory? He sat on the edge of the bed staring at the notebook for several minutes. Then his phone vibrated on the nightstand. A new text message had arrived from an unknown number. Ethan picked it up and read the words on the screen. "Don't cancel Thursday's appointment. It's the only chance you'll have to learn what they did to you." Ethan read the message twice, the words settling heavily in his mind. What they did to you. The phrasing felt intentional, almost accusatory, and it made the back of his neck tighten with unease. For several seconds, he simply stared at the phone screen, debating whether to respond. Eventually, he typed a short reply. "Who is this?" The response arrived almost instantly, as if the sender had been waiting. Someone who remembers. Ethan frowned at the message, his pulse quickening slightly. The answer wasn't helpful, but it carried a strange confidence. He tried again. "Remembers what?" This time, the reply took longer, long enough for Ethan to set the phone down and begin pacing slowly across the room. When the phone buzzed again, he picked it up immediately. "Your life before the clinic." Ethan felt a cold knot form in his stomach. According to the notebook, his condition began 18 months ago. That meant there was a clear point when things changed. He typed another message. "Are you saying the clinic caused it?" The 3 dots appeared on the screen, paused, then vanished before finally returning with a reply. "I'm saying the diagnosis wasn't the beginning. It was the cover." Ethan lowered the phone slightly, trying to steady his thoughts. The explanation in the notebook suddenly felt incomplete. If the clinic wasn't simply treating his condition, then what exactly had been happening during those appointments he couldn't remember? He walked back to his desk and reopened the laptop, pulling up the original medical file attached to the email. This time, he studied it more carefully. The document listed multiple cognitive tests, MRI scans, and neurological evaluations. But something about the timeline looked odd. Several test entries were recorded on dates when Ethan distinctly remembered being at work. One of the scans was logged on a Saturday he had spent at his friend Daniel's wedding. The conflict in dates made his chest tighten. Either his memory was far worse than he realized, or the records were inaccurate. Slowly, another possibility surfaced in his mind. What if the records were intentionally altered? His phone buzzed again before he could finish the thought. The unknown sender had sent another message. "Look inside the notebook cover." Ethan reached for the blue notebook again, turning it over in his hands. At first, he saw nothing unusual. But when he bent the back cover slightly, a thin piece of paper slid loose from the inner lining. It was folded carefully, almost hidden. Ethan unfolded it and saw a printed photograph attached to the page with clear tape. The image showed him sitting in a medical chair wearing small electrodes across his temples. Behind him stood a man in a white coat adjusting a monitor. Ethan recognized the doctor from the clinic's website immediately. But the expression on his own face in the photo was what made him pause. He didn't look sick. He looked tense, alert, like someone watching something carefully. Beneath the photograph was a handwritten note in his own handwriting. "If you forgot this, it means they reset you again." Ethan's heart began beating faster as he read the rest of the message written below the photo. The note explained that during several clinic visits, he began suspecting the doctors were not only observing his memory condition, but deliberately manipulating it. According to the entry, experimental treatments were being tested to erase specific memories rather than simply treat cognitive decline. Ethan had started documenting everything privately after noticing that entire conversations with the doctor disappeared from his recollection within days. The final line of the note was written darker than the rest, as if pressed harder into the paper. "They say it's treatment. But every session I forget more than just the illness." The phone vibrated again on the desk. Ethan looked down at the new message. "Tomorrow when you go to the appointment, act like you remember nothing. If they realize you know the truth, they won't let you leave with it." Ethan sat quietly for a moment, absorbing everything he had read. According to the clinic's records, he was a patient with a degenerative memory condition. According to the notebook, he was part of something far more dangerous. Someone was experimenting with the ability to erase memories deliberately. And somehow he had already discovered it once before. He just didn't remember. He looked at the appointment confirmation email again on his laptop screen. Thursday, 3:30. For the first time since the strange messages began, Ethan understood why his past self insisted he attend the appointment no matter what. If the clinic really held answers about what had been done to him, then walking away would mean losing the truth forever. His phone buzzed one last time with a final message from the unknown number. Be careful tomorrow. You're not the only patient who figured it out.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos.